Ever walked into a room and instantly misjudged the person in charge? Well, in a courtroom, that's a mistake that can cost you everything. Today we're diving into a story about a hotshot lawyer who learned this lesson the hard way. He had a knack for winning cases, not always because his clients were innocent, but because he was a master of courtroom theatrics. His latest case involved a client accused of a pretty straightforward burglary. The evidence was strong: security footage, fingerprints, the works. But for Mark, that was just part of the challenge. The case was assigned to Judge Peterson. On the surface, Judge Peterson was the picture of calm and experience. He was in his late 60s, with graying hair and a quiet demeanor. He rarely raised his voice and was known for his patience. Mark, doing his pre-trial homework, looked at the judge's record. He saw a long, respectable career, but nothing that screamed genius or unflappable. Mark figured the judge was just another old-timer, set in his ways, and probably a bit slow on the uptake. Big mistake. Mark's strategy for the trial was simple: create chaos. He planned to overwhelm the jury and the judge with a blizzard of pointless motions, bizarre objections, and dramatic, long-winded speeches. He believed that if he could create enough confusion and frustration, he could make the prosecution's seemingly solid case look weak and disorganized. He called it the smoke and mirrors approach. The trial began, and Mark immediately put his plan into action. The prosecutor, a young and earnest lawyer named Sarah, called her first witness, the police officer who responded to the burglary call. As Sarah began her questioning, Mark shot to his feet. "Objection, Your Honor." He boomed, his voice echoing in the otherwise silent courtroom. "The prosecution is leading the witness." Sarah blinked, confused. Judge Peterson peered over his glasses at Mark. A flicker of something amusement, maybe, crossed his face before he responded in his usual calm tone. "Mr. Mark, that is a standard foundational question. It is not leading. Overruled. Please, sit down." Mark sat, but he was just getting started. For the next hour, he objected to nearly everything. He objected to the officer describing the time of day. Claiming it was prejudicial, he objected to the officer identifying the location of the crime, arguing it was hearsay because the officer hadn't built the building himself. Each time, Judge Peterson would calmly listen, offer a brief, logical reason why the objection was nonsense, and overrule it. The jury was starting to look annoyed. Sarah was visibly frustrated. Mark, however, seemed to think his plan was working perfectly. As the video played, Mark leaped up again. "Objection. This video has been tampered with." Judge Peterson paused the video. "On what grounds do you make that claim, Mr. Mark?" Mark said, gesturing wildly at the screen. "The lighting, it's inconsistent. Look at the shadows. They shift in an unnatural way. This is clearly a doctored video, a fabrication designed to frame my innocent client." After a few moments, Judge Peterson sat back in his chair. "I would also like to remind you that the chain of custody for this evidence has been impeccably established, and your own expert witness examined it and found no signs of tampering. Your objection is not only overruled, it's frivolous. Sit down." A quiet gasp rippled through the courtroom. Mark's face went pale. He hadn't expected the judge to notice such a tiny detail. He hadn't even noticed it himself. He sank back into his chair, his confidence visibly shaken. But the real masterstroke from Judge Peterson was yet to come. Later in the trial, Mark decided to put his client on the stand, a risky move he thought would pay off. He'd coached his client to be emotional, to talk about his difficult life, and to paint himself as a victim. The client gave a tearful, rambling testimony, completely avoiding the facts of the case. When it was Sarah's turn to cross-examine, she tried to pin him down on the details of the night of the burglary. But every time she asked a direct question, Mark would interrupt. Objection, badgering the witness. Objection, asked and answered. It was a relentless barrage. Sarah could barely get a sentence out. Judge Peterson had been letting Mark have his say, overruling each objection patiently. But now, he had clearly had enough. He held up a hand, silencing the entire room. "Mr. Mark," he said, his voice dangerously low, "you will stop. You have made 23 objections in the last 10 minutes. 21 of them have been without merit. You are not protecting your client. You are obstructing this court's proceedings and trying to prevent the jury from hearing the truth." He then turned to the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "a lawyer's job is to present evidence and make legal arguments. It is not to create a circus. I instruct you to disregard the constant interruptions from the defense. They have no bearing on the facts of this case." He then looked back at Mark, his eyes like ice. "One more baseless objection, Mr. Mark, and I will hold you in contempt of court. Are we clear?" The threat hung in the air, heavy and absolute. Mark, for the first time in his career, was speechless. He simply nodded, his face ashen. The swagger was gone. The show was over. He had tried to play the judge for a fool, but it turned out the judge was playing chess while Mark was playing checkers. The rest of the trial was a blur. With his theatrics neutralized, Mark had no real defense. The jury returned a guilty verdict in under an hour. Mark packed up his briefcase in the empty courtroom, his shoulders slumped. Judge Peterson was gathering his papers when he looked over at the defeated lawyer. "Mr. Mark," the judge said, not unkindly, "you're a talented lawyer. You're quick on your feet. But you rely on tricks, not substance. You assumed I was too old or too tired to see what you were doing. Let me give you some advice. The best lawyers don't just know the law. They know people. They respect the process. Never, ever underestimate the person sitting in this chair." It's a powerful reminder that in the courtroom and in life, true strength isn't about being the loudest person in the room. It's about being the smartest. What do you think? Have you ever seen someone completely misjudge a situation like this? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. See you next time.